Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Muhammad Mansour Zubairu from the Department of Mathematical Sciences, Zubairu University, Kano. I will be the one to take you through Module 8 of the course GSP 2205, Philosophy and Logic. I will be with you and take Module 8 out of the 10 modules we have so far. So before we begin, I will first have to welcome you to our great noble university, the new, I'm referring to the new students, and at the same time to welcome the old students back to 2021 session. You are welcome, and I wish you best of luck throughout your studies. So without wasting much of our time, as it is being displayed, we shall look at the relationship between logic and science with application in social sciences and humanities. However, the content shall be as follows. First, we are going to have a brief introduction. We'll look at the logic itself, sciences, relationship between logic and sciences, application of logic in social sciences, and finally, the application to humanities. Okay, I believe in the other modules, we must have discussed about some basic concepts in logic. But then we shall briefly brush back and look at what we have learned so far, and then we move ahead. Okay. The aim of this lecture is the following, actually. One, as it has been there in the slide, is to give a flashback on what we already know about logic, and then briefly remind ourselves about sciences. Then we relate logic to sciences, and finally, its application, its relationship with social sciences and humanities. Logic in general concerned with reasoning and valid inference, and other topics which grow out of it. Let us briefly remind ourselves of an argument. We must have learned about that an argument constitutes of two portions, namely one, the premises and conclusion. Actually, not all arguments are valid. Some arguments are valid and some arguments are invalid. For example, let us look at this example in the premises where we have Adam is a man. Next, all men are mortal, as you can see. Then the conclusion, therefore, Adam is mortal. We need to note that Adam is a man is a true statement in the premises, and all men are mortal is also a true statement and is there in the premises. And the conclusion itself, which is therefore Adam is mortal, is also a true statement. So let us take note that in the premises, all the statements are true, while in the conclusion also, the conclusion is also true. Now let us look at another argument, even though, because what we have seen previously, the premises, all the statements in the premises are true, and the conclusion is true, and the argument is actually a valid argument. But then let us look at a different example where we have the premises to be false, all the premises. The statement in the premises are being false, but nevertheless, and also the conclusion being also false, but nevertheless is also a valid argument. So look at this. The premises we have: Socrates is a goat. Of course, Socrates is a well-known philosopher. It's never a god. Socrates is human being. So you can see this statement is not true. All goats can fly. Of course, this is also not a true statement, because one can easily point at a goat which cannot fly. So this is false. But then one can infer from these two statements and make the following conclusion. If Socrates is a goat, and we are sure that all goats can fly, one can easily conclude that Socrates can fly. So again, we need to take note that we have in the premises all the statements being false, and similarly in the conclusion is also false, but nevertheless, the argument is valid. Let us consider one more example. Here in the premises, I will go to work either tomorrow or today. Still in the premises, I'm going to stay home today. Now, the conclusion is therefore, I will go to work tomorrow. But this conclusion, is it really correct? After all, isn't it possible that I will stay home today and then wake up sick tomorrow? And then end up staying home again. If that happens, the conclusion will turn out to be false. But one thing we need to notice is that in that case, the first premises, which said I will go to work either tomorrow or today, will be false as well. Although we have no guarantee that the conclusion is true. It can only be false if at least one of the premises is false. If all premises are true, we can be sure that the conclusion is also true. This is the sense in which the conclusion is forced onto us by the premises. And this is the standard we shall use to judge the correctness of deductive reasoning. All the three examples we have seen so far are valid arguments. Now let us quickly look at a particular argument which is indeed not valid. In the premises, we have either the butler is guilty or the maid is guilty as one of the statements. Again, two, either the maid is guilty or the cook is guilty. And the conclusion is therefore either the butler is guilty or the cook is guilty. The argument is invalid because the conclusion could be false even if both premises are true. For example, if the maid were guilty, but the butler and the cook were both innocent, then both premises will be true and the conclusion will be false. So this argument is indeed an invalid argument. So in a nutshell, in summary, you shall say that an argument is sound when it is both valid and has true premises. An argument is sound when it is both valid and it has true premises. One thing we need to notice is that in example 2, in the previous slide, you can see that the premises are false. This argument is a valid argument, but this argument is not sound, but is a valid argument. Why? Because the premises is false. So we have that. Now let us go to and explain science. To learn about or to learn truth about the world must be studied scientifically. The aim of science is to discover general truth with which facts we encountered can be explained. And what is explanation? Every explanation gives an account, a set of statements from which the explained can be logically inferred. The best account will be the one that most reduces the problematic aspect of what was explained. Such an account will comprise a coherent set of general truth or a theory. To explain some serious disease, for example, we need coherent account of what causes the disease and how it can be treated. For example, patients suffer from diabetes because of their insulin deficiency. When we say Q because P, then that may express either an explanation or an argument. It expresses an argument when we are inferring to conclusion key from the premises P. This expresses an explanation when facing the fact of Q. Our reasoning moves back from the fact we discovered, the circumstances that led to that. So what is the relationship between logic and science? One answer that comes to mind is that logic provides a language, or perhaps a syntax for modeling scientific discoveries. Of course, Avina himself seems to have lived as much when he writes the relation of logic to inner reflection, which is called internal reasoning. It's like the relation of grammar to the explicit interpretation, which is called external reasoning, and like the relation of prosody to the poem. To test the truth, maybe the direct or indirect, to determine whether it is raining outside, I need only a glance out the window. In general, however, the propositions offered as an explanatory hypothesis are not directly testable. If my absence at work had been explained by my claim about some traffic accident, the employer, if suspicious, might test the explanation indirectly by seeking the police accident report. For instance, an indirect test deduce from the proposition to be tested, for example, that I was involved in an accident. Some other proposition, for example, that an accident report had been submitted, capable of being tested directly. If that deduced proposition is false, the explanation that implied is very likely to be also what? False. If the deduced proposition is true, that provides some evidence, but not conclusive evidence. That explanation is true, having been indirectly confirmed. So now let us look at the relationship between logic and science. One answer that comes to mind is that the logic provides a language, as we just said, and perhaps a better syntax for modeling scientific discoveries. So let us quickly look at how logic is being applied in social sciences. The social sciences, including economic, sociology, anthropology, are often distinguished from the natural sciences. And though to be fundamentally different, humans are self-interpreting, and our beliefs about ourselves can have an effect on ourselves. Anthropology deals with the economic activities of simple societies, whereas economics studies the economic activities of complex societies. Since economics as a science is one in which conclusions are not made from controlled tests done in the laboratory, but from the analysis of statistics drawn from real world happening, making sound conclusion from a set of data depends on a sound application of the principle of logic. So economic often base their agreement or disagreements with each other on a logical grounds, pointing out fallacies of logic, which may invalidate the other position or validate the other positions. Now, let's briefly move to humanities. Logic was one of the central disciplines which every student in the incoming class required to study it. Humanities study human cultures, which include history, language, law, politics, literature, performing art, religion, etc. There is no doubt an intimate relationship between logic and law, as rightly pointed out by Nicholas F. Lucas. Law, accurately speaking, is organized principle. And from a political point of view, is the chart by which human action in terms of fact is regulated. Manifestedly, the inertia of such a non-automatic machine calls for a force to give it vitality and action, as well as supplementary art of manipulation. Such energy must be supplied by human life. It is sometimes said that law is applied logic. Obviously, this is epigrammatic statement this epigrammatic statement has a foundation of truth. For the practice of law is fundamentally argumentative. It deals with subjects and controversy, and its primary aim is the settlement of disputes, sometimes by persuasive method out of court, and sometimes in a fiercely contested legal battles. In either instance, the instrument of reasoning playing a dominant part. The lawyer for defense, this is fact apparent from expressions we frequently hear after a trial of well-contested case, where the best legal talent has been employed on both sides. We often hear expressions as this: the lawyer for the defense gave a logical argument to the jury, and the plaintiff's attorney introduced his evidence in a logical manner. We have to stop here. I will in the module drop some exercises for you to look at and supplied and answer, and we shall chat through the platform. You can ask some questions, and I will be happy to actually answer some of those questions. So thank you for listening. And at the same time, I will attach to the module some materials where you can go through and learn more about this. Okay, so thank you for listening. We have come to the end of the lecture, and I wish you best of luck. So we meet during our chat. All right.